Before the billions, before the global empire, before the world called her a queen, there was a moment that could have ended everything. A night that didn't just shock the world. It changed the course of her life forever. The headlines were everywhere. The images, impossible to ignore. But what the world saw was only the surface. Because behind the fame, behind the power, there's a story far darker than most people realize. This is not just Rihanna's success story. This is what really happened behind it. Long before the fame, before the empire, Rihanna was just a girl growing up in Barbados, a place the world sees as beautiful. But for her, it wasn't always that simple. Born into a home that wasn't stable, Rihanna grew up surrounded by tension. Her father struggled with addiction, alcohol and drugs becoming part of her everyday reality. Arguments weren't rare, they were normal. And over time, that kind of environment begins to shape you. For Rihanna, it meant growing up faster than she should have. She watched her parents' relationship fall apart. She saw her mother trying to hold everything together. And in the middle of it all, she learned something early. Nothing is guaranteed. But instead of breaking her, it did something else. It built something inside her, a kind of quiet strength. At school, Rihanna didn't stand out because she was loud or attention-seeking. In fact, she wasn't chasing fame at all. She just had something different, something controlled, something real. And somehow, music became the one place where everything made sense. She didn't have a perfect voice yet. She didn't have connections. But she had presence, emotion, and a confidence that didn't need to prove itself. Still, the pressure of her environment didn't disappear. She later revealed that as a child, she suffered from intense headaches, so serious that doctors once feared something was wrong. But it wasn't a disease. It was stress, the kind that builds quietly until it starts to show. And yet, through all of it, she didn't collapse. Because even then, something was forming. Not just a singer, but someone who could carry pain and turn it into something powerful. At the time, she didn't know where her life was going. She didn't know the world would one day know her name. But everything she went through was about to lead to one moment, the moment that would change everything. Everything changed when she met someone who saw what no one else could. At just 15 years old, Rihanna formed a small girl group with 2 of her classmates. It wasn't serious. There was no big plan, no clear future, just a few teenagers singing, hoping for something more. But then, something unexpected happened. They were introduced to a music producer visiting Barbados. His name was Evan Rogers. And from the moment Rihanna walked into the room, everything shifted. Not because she was perfect, not because she was the most experienced, but because there was something about her that felt undeniable. Presence, confidence, a quiet intensity that didn't ask for attention but commanded it. Evan Rogers saw it immediately, and he knew this wasn't just another audition. This was different, so he made a decision that would change her life forever. He invited Rihanna to the United States, not as part of a group, but alone. That moment was the first real turning point. Because for the first time, someone wasn't just seeing her potential. They were betting on it. Rihanna recorded demo tracks in a small studio. Nothing polished. Nothing designed to impress the industry. Just raw voice, raw emotion. But that was enough. Those demos made their way to Def Jam recordings. And eventually to one of the most powerful figures in the music industry. Jay-Z. At the time, Jay-Z was the president of Def Jam. And when Rihanna walked into that room, it wasn't just another meeting. It was an opportunity. One that could either open every door or close them all. She sang. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but honestly. And sometimes, that's more powerful than perfection. Jay-Z didn't hesitate. In fact, the story goes that he refused to let her leave the building until the deal was signed. Because he knew, if she walked out, someone else would take her. Rihanna signed with Def Jam at just 16. And from that moment on, there was no going back. Her first single, Pon de Replay, introduced her to the world. It was catchy. It was energetic. It worked. But it wasn't her full identity. Not yet. Because Rihanna wasn't here to be just another pop artist. She was evolving. Fast. Each project, each appearance, each performance. She was changing. Refining her image. Taking control of who she wanted to be. And then, it happened. The release of Umbrella. That wasn't just a song. It was a transformation. Everything about it was different. The sound, the image, the attitude. This was no longer the young girl from Barbados trying to break into the industry. This was a star. Ella, The song exploded globally. Charts, awards, recognition, everywhere. And just like that, Rihanna wasn't rising anymore. She had arrived. But what made her different wasn't just success. It was how quickly she adapted. While most artists spend years trying to find their identity, Rihanna kept changing hers, album after album, era after era. She wasn't afraid to experiment, to take risks, to become someone new, and that unpredictability became her advantage. Because the industry couldn't define her, and if they couldn't define her, they couldn't control her. From Good Girl Gone Bad to Rated R, from loud to unapologetic, each project didn't just show growth, it showed power. By the early 2010s, Rihanna wasn't just successful. She was dominating, hit after hit, collaboration after collaboration. Her voice became unavoidable, her image became iconic, and her influence, global. But success at that level comes with a cost. Because while the world saw the hits, the fashion, the confidence, there was another story unfolding behind the scenes. A story that had already started to change everything, and soon, it would become impossible to ignore. At the peak of her rise, when everything seemed unstoppable, everything changed. Not slowly, not quietly, but in a single moment that shocked the world. What happened that night didn't just become news, it became a global headline. Her relationship with Chris Brown had already been in the spotlight. To the public, they were young, successful, and powerful, a perfect image. But behind that image, something else was happening. And when it finally came to light, it was impossible to ignore. The reports were everywhere. The details, disturbing. The photos, unforgettable. For the first time, the world didn't see Rihanna as a rising superstar. They saw her as something else, a victim. And in that moment, everything paused. Her career, her image, her future. No one knew what would happen next. Because moments like that don't just disappear. They follow you. They define you if you let them. And for Rihanna, the pressure was overwhelming. The media wouldn't stop. The public had opinions. The narrative was out of her control. For many artists, that would have been the end. But Rihanna didn't respond the way people expected. She didn't rush back. She didn't try to fix her image overnight. She stepped back. And in that silence, something changed. When she returned, it wasn't the same person. The music was darker. The tone was different. The emotion heavier. Rated R wasn't just an album. It was a statement. A reflection of everything she had gone through, and everything she refused to hide. She wasn't trying to look perfect anymore. She was being real. And that honesty changed everything. But the pressure didn't disappear. If anything, it grew. Every decision she made was questioned. Every move analyzed. And when she later made the controversial decision to reconnect with Chris Brown, the world reacted again. Confusion, criticism, judgment. People didn't understand. Some didn't want to. But the truth is, real life isn't always simple. And healing doesn't follow a straight line. Through it all, Rihanna stayed in control of one thing. Her narrative. She didn't let the world decide who she was. She rebuilt herself on her own terms. Stronger, sharper, untouchable. And slowly, the story began to shift. From victim to survivor. From survivor to power. Because what could have destroyed her became the very thing that redefined her. But Rihanna wasn't done evolving. In fact, her biggest transformation was still coming. Rihanna's story was never just about music. Not about charts. Not about awards. Not even about fame. Because if it were, she would have stopped there. At the top. At the moment where most artists spend their entire careers trying to reach. But Rihanna didn't stop. She shifted. While the world was still watching her as a global superstar, she quietly began building something else. Something bigger. Not just influence. Power. Through Fenty Beauty, she didn't just launch a brand. She changed an entire industry. An industry that had ignored millions of people for years. And in doing so, she didn't just sell products. She sent a message. That beauty doesn't have one standard. That power doesn't belong to one image. And that success isn't defined by what the world expects from you. It's defined by what you build for yourself. From a childhood shaped by chaos, to a moment that could have ended everything, to becoming one of the most powerful women in the world, Rihanna didn't just survive her story, she rewrote it. And maybe that's the real truth behind the spotlight. Not the fame, Not the music, but the power to become something more.